Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Today we're going to be doing a special video. We're going to take a look at all of the different Kickstarters that we've backed for SideGame LLC and then talk about my initial impressions of them so far based on like the updates, campaigns, or maybe some of them have actually sent some things to us, whether it be through just like Wave 1 or Wave 2. But most of these games that you're going to see are games that we have not had delivered whatsoever. So this dates back all the way to July of 2019. That's our most not most purchased. What is it? The game that we bought the furthest ago was back in July of 2019, and that's where we're going to start the video. So without further ado, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please make sure that you do. It is the best way to help us grow. And for those of you already subscribed, thank you so much for the continued support and thanks for being here. If you're watching live or watching later down the road, please let me know down in the comments what you think about these games as we talk about them. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the oldest game. Now, if they haven't actually arrived yet, I'm going to talk about the thing that maybe I'm most excited for when they do arrive. So our first game here is the oldest one on the list, and this is Middara, Unintentional Malum, the Complete Trilogy. So this was backed in this gigantic thing where we got all of the content. So there's like, I think 3 acts of the entire campaign. And where this one lied, we did get the first act, and I actually have sold it off already. So I imagine when the other 2 pieces come in, I'm going to go ahead and sell those as well. But this first act offered a dungeon crawl that was huge on story. Now, the story is my favorite part of this game. You have this huge spiral bound notebook that has this like red decoder reader that's going to be blocking different paths, and there are a lot of paths to choose from. Speaking of things to choose from, you also have a lot of customization in the characters that you're picking, but the thing that slowed this one down for me is the resolution of your different actions, and that was why it ultimately left. Whenever you did resolve something, there were several processes that you had to go through, lots of numbers that you had to check, and it felt like it was a lot for things that I could get similar vibes from, and even more satisfying gameplay from things like a Gloomhaven or most recently Oathsworn. I think Oathsworn was the biggest nail in the coffin for this one and why it left. So when the other 2 do come, I will be selling those off as the expansion content. I imagine there will be buyers for those, as apparently you can jump into them. But overall, I think that the experience was a lot of fun that I did have with it, and I think that I do want to go back and just listen to the story. So that's our first one, that is Middara. Now you'll have to bear with me here as we move from each different section. When I initially tried to set up this video, I had all of the different tabs opened and so that I could shift easily from each one to each one. But by doing that, it like took up all of the RAM, I believe that's the term for it, of my computer, and it just stopped working because the Kickstarter pages were gigantic. So that was a no-go. So instead, what I'm doing is in the background here, I don't know if you can hear it or not. I hope not. I have the different Kickstarter tab essentially in the back here, and now I am just putting them in. So you'll see it change back here. So I'm trying to do it as inconspicuously as possible, but now you know what's going on in the background here. So our next game here is Trudvang Legends. Now this is another one that I did receive Wave 1 of from Simon, and this is a storytelling game set in an RPG universe actually. This game has a bag building mechanism at its forefront, and the purpose is to develop your bag during the early stages of the game to help you prepare for these giant boss fights. Now this is what the game is supposed to offer, these single shot scenarios that are linked through this Saga campaign board that have these cards that actually slot in. And then as you proceed, you're able to get more upgrades for your world. So it's a persistent world. And then you're also going to be able to get upgrades for your different characters. So it is a large campaign setting that's played through these smaller sessions that feature their own engine building. Now, unfortunately, that was one of the reasons I disliked this game, was the engine building itself was repetitive and boring and honestly not that interesting. And it felt very grindy, and you had to do that grind in each session. This was one of my biggest disappointments from this past year. And it's one of those things where, yeah, I'll wait until the stuff comes for the second wave, but I don't know if I'm going to get that played. So unfortunately, that is Trudvang. As you can see, there's like all of these expansions that are coming in too with more stuff. And one of the big things that stank was this came with these like upgraded tokens, and the tokens were like the plastic versions. And that seems amazing. If you've played games like Quacks of Quedlinburg, then you're like, oh yeah, I definitely want to get the super nice versions of this bag building token game. But they didn't come with the first wave. So it was like, what? Why would you ship that seems like the thing that if you were to break the shipping cycle or the wave cycle, you should probably include the extra plastic chips in that extra one. Yeah, these plastic runes here. What a miss. And this is one that I don't know. Maybe I'll try it again when it comes out. Maybe there's some changes with some of the expansions, but I don't know how often this is going to get played. So that is our next one. It's Trudvang Legends. That brings us to the third oldest. This is the Isofarian Guard. This is a bag building game, very similar to the last one, actually, that features these large, heavy poker chips, things something like Too Many Bones, Chip Theory game style. The entire game has you with your own little player dashboard. And honestly, it reminds me a little bit of something like Hoplomachus Victorum, where you have this map in front of you that you're traveling around, and you're going from encounter to encounter on these large maps with this player dashboard in front of you. However, your different equipment and items are represented by these chips in a bag. Now, this is supposed to be delivering fairly soon, which is exciting because has been 4 years since this Kickstarter, which is insane. And we'll see what happens when it shows up. But the thing I'm most excited for is honestly, it looks like it has a seamless production system where, like, not production system, but gameplay system, where you are easily able to make adjustments and modifications and participate in skirmishes and battle. It looks like what Trudvang Legends was trying to do, but set in a way that's easily stored, organized, but the gameplay isn't grindy. You're having your persistent upgraded bag as you play through the experience. So I hope this is a good one, and please don't disappoint me. I would be very sad if you did. Next one is one that is very familiar to a lot of people, and it should be arriving any day, hopefully. This is Frosthaven. So Frosthaven is a sequel to Gloomhaven. I don't think I'm going to cover much on this one, but if you know what Gloomhaven is, you know what Frosthaven is. Most chances are you've probably backed this game yourself. But we got the big bundle here that's got the organizer. Thing I'm most excited for this is honestly the classes. I'm excited to just play more Gloomhaven with new unique races. The Blinkblade is what I think I'm going to start with. I love the Quattral Demolitionist in Jaws of the Lion, and seeing that they're taking new directions with these Quattral just sounds awesome to me. So I think that as mentioned before, I'm not going to go too much on Gloomhaven here. They also have the special envelope X though, and that's pretty cool too. If you have solved that portion in Gloomhaven, you'll know exactly why that's awesome, because there was like some convoluted thing you could do to get your own version, but now that they've created this actual mass production copy, that is cool to me. So excited to play more Gloomhaven. That is Frosthaven. You have to forgive me 1 second as I juggle these things. This next one here is another one that I was pretty excited for, and it's kind of scary where this is in the development process. This is Hell of the Last Saga. So in Hell of the Last Saga, it's Mythic Games' take on this Nordic legend, where you're going to be going through these different sagas, these stories, and you're sailing to this island, and at each island, you'll have some sort of mission that you're going to have to explore and search around the area for that's story-driven. So I hope this one is solid. As mentioned before, it went through a little bit of development troubles, where Mythic had to sell off a bunch of their other properties in order to stay in business, but this is one that they kept. So hopefully that means that they are going to be finishing this one fairly soon. The play session looks fine. The skill tests themselves look interesting, but I'll be honest with you, it's been a long time since I've looked at this one, and it came up during that whole Frosthaven, that summer, where it was like Frosthaven, Ankh, and this, and it's not one that I've really kept in touch with. They do like a monthly update thing, but when you get this many Kickstarters, it's one of those things where you just stop watching after a while. I don't think there's anything crazy that's going to be drawing me back to reading those. And when something is so delayed, it's hard to get excited for every single update that they release. So unfortunately, not super crazy about Hell of the Last Saga, but it's one of those games that has a theme that, man, if it hits when it gets here, I'm thrilled if it does. That would be amazing. So that's Hell of the Last Saga. Next one here is Monumental. This is the reprint for the game with the new expansion. Basically got this because of the praise in the original one. It is a deck building game that's also a civilization game, where you are putting these cards out in front of you into this grid, and that grid is going to allow you to take your actions. And so you're putting your stock into not only your own personal engine building and development, but also spreading out on the board, which is interconnected between all of the different players. So you have this obvious choice, not obvious choice, but this obvious decision of picking between building your own engine or going out onto the main board. And so you're obviously going to have some tension between these different characters that you're going to be fighting with. I don't see why there's a lot of art on here. That's kind of frustrating to me. I'm trying to show off what's going on here, but lots of minis, lots of cards. There you go, those terrain tiles. That's what I was going for. So you have the terrain tiles that have the different resources that you'll be fighting over. So it's a constant choice between, hey, do I want to make sure that I'm developing in my own city or expanding outward and fighting for those others? The thing I'm most excited for this is there are some new changes to speed up the game if you're playing with high player counts. And so that sounds awesome. I love it when they make things a bit more accessible for more people. I think there's a bit of simultaneous play, which sounds interesting to me because it is a deck building system. I imagine you could simulate some of this and then maybe do like a simultaneous reveal. So hopefully that plays out well here, and they have had time to test it clearly because it has also been delayed a ridiculous amount. So Funforge is another one of those where they had some issues on the back end, and it's like, are we actually going to get this game? Pretty scary stuff. Next, we have Sorcerer Endbringer. Now, this is one that I actually have played, but I have not played any of the new expansion stuff. This is a dueling battle card game where you're mages. You have one half of your deck that's like your character where you're from, and then one that's like your spell school, and you mix them together, and that's your deck that you'll bring out. It's a not area location, it's location controls, like a lane game. You have 3 different locations, you're playing cards to them, and you're trying to win 2 of them by the end of the game. If you do that, you win the entire thing. So you can think Marvel Snap, but way longer. Not necessarily in a bad way, though. There's some awesome decisions, and you'll have this mana that you generate every turn that allows you to play your cards. And I had a lot of fun with this one. I was quite surprised how good it was, and that's why I ended up backing it, the original Sorcerer. But Endbringer offers new play for the campaign mode. There is a solo mode, there is a cooperative mode, and I think that was the one that interested me the most, was the cooperative play. The idea of having these giant behemoths that are actually at the different locations, and then they move around to the different locations. You're not sure when you're going to be able to use the characters that you've played onto these different things, and they also have attacks that affect based on not only the abilities of the characters but also positioning. So there's a lot of things to think about tactically, strategically, as well as what decks you're building. So that initial deck building, but it is simplified where you're just taking 2 different factions and smashing them together. So it sounds approachable while also being exciting and engaging, and that's probably the thing I'm most excited for, is just that cooperative version and the solo mode and the puzzles that it's going to be able to get out. This next game here is one that also has delivered in Europe already, but not in the United States. I've heard that Funnigan Logistics, since they are closing in the near future, that they've had some troubles with getting this actually, that final step of getting it into backers' hands. This is Deck of Wonders. So this is bid as a solo game where you are playing Hearthstone or something similar, where it's this mage, you're trying to defeat an enemy. In this case, it is the characters in the Deck of Wonders. And every time you play a card, you play them to yourself on one side, but then the enemies have this reverse side that's present on every single card. So it's a strange system where your cards are also your opponent's cards, and it has such a short playtime that it sounds super compelling. You have this small little thing that evolves the more that you play it and the more that you get into it, but everything is it's so uniform, but also it's thoughtfully laid out. It reminds me of a design that you see in something like Awakened Realms, where every single part of a card is used for something. This has that sensation and feeling where you are moving around this map, this battlefield, and managing cards, but it's so important what you play because it also affects what your opponent is able to do. So I love this system, and I hope that this game has that, and that's definitely the thing I'm most excited for, is that evolving system, but with such a smart, tight design. So that is the Deck of Wonders. This next game is a sequel to a game that left the library. This is the 7th Citadel. In the original 7th Continent, you are moving around a map, and on this map, you're exploring all of these different areas, and these quests were hours long. You had one objective that you were completing, but you didn't really have anything except for maybe like a picture of something that you had to go with, and you would try to find that in this continent. In the 7th Citadel, they've taken away that roaming feeling of the original, and they're putting you on a story path now, using the same mechanisms of going from location to location and exploring and finding new things. I love this. One of the things that felt terrible to me in the original one was after you had gone through an island once, just a single time, walking through a sidewalk or walking up a hill or something, you had seen every single thing on that card, and it didn't normally get replaced by anything else. And every time you wanted to go back, you had to go through every single thing. And it got to this point where I was wanting to find something new and interesting to explore, but it just never happened. And when it finally did, it felt so unsatisfying because it was only like a couple of cards, and it had taken me hours to get to that point. That was so frustrating to me. But this, with its encounter system, sounds like the approach that Etherfields took, where you have these missions that are separated and you're only taking a set amount of cards for each of those missions. And so you're never having to retread the same ground. And because of the story, it's propelling you forward and you're going to be able to actually explore something new each session. And that is going to be what's keeping you gripping back. Not this kind of mindless wandering, but a actual purpose to the wandering, and everything that you're wandering through is brand new. And I have a feeling that if you do go on that replay, it's going to feel better than if you're just sort of wandering through that same island. So that was my thoughts of backing this. Was, wow, this sounds like it took that sensation of exploring new lands that the original Seventh Continent had, but now it's taken that and stretched it out for the entire campaign experience. And I hope that's the way it works. So that's the thing I'm most excited about in Seventh Citadel, the new form of exploration, something like Etherfields. Next is the expansion to Atlantis Rising. This is Monstrosities. This has also been taking forever. I know that the Vincent Dutrade had some issues, I believe, with his artwork. He was having some trouble, as said on the updates, with creating the pieces for the different monstrosities. And so that has been trickling out. So I have no idea where this is in its progress. So that's a little frustrating. But overall, I think the most excited thing I am for this is the new leaders. So forget the monsters. I actually just want more leaders for Atlantis Rising. I think it's the most interesting part of the original game, where you have these different characters that are unique, and then in the smaller player count games, you'll get these cards that from the hologram that allow you to basically use all of the different characters. There was a small Dice Tower promo that came out a while ago that had just one new character, and it was so much fun to be able to use this new character in this new setting. I also just like the idea of having new challenges for the game, breaking it open a little bit. I think the gameplay loop already is very satisfying. So just having more library cards, more ways to freshen things up, that sounds amazing. So excited for new allies, counselors, magic items. Let's do it. And more difficulty levels, as if this game was not hard enough on the higher difficulties. You got more. So excited for that one. There's a lot to love about that game. So everything new, I am excited to try. So that is Atlantis Rising Monstrosities. Next is the expansion for Vindication. Now, this one I'm a little apprehensive on. It is coming, though. This is one that you've also been receiving updates for pretty recently. And so I have hope that we will get this one soon. So in Vindication, the expansions so far for it have not been great. They've all kind of sucked, except for this very small one that came in like the playmat. There was this long little bar that you could use that was the side quest that you could send your companions on. I love that expansion. I think all of the other expansions, though, sort of either railroad the game or break the game. And that was not something that I was interested in at all. So I don't play with pretty much any of the other expansions, even the triangle one, which I really liked at first, but it honestly made some degenerate plays happen, particularly with the purple cards, because you could do these things where you could get an extra activation in that you normally shouldn't have been able to. And then it just made purple like the most ridiculous strategy to go down. It was insane. But this has these new cards in it that are these huge story cards. And so the idea of this is to add a big story portion to the game with these giant, huge sized cards. And so that's the purpose of this, is to add a new story focused expansion. It's a new take, something they haven't done yet. They've done boss battling. They've done small mini expansions in the form of little locations that you replace in the bag. But this one sounds like a brand new concept in the game. And I hope that it works well. Thing I'm most excited for, honestly, I think the storage system looks pretty sweet. They gave us a new box that's included, and that's going to store all of the character stuff with all their expansion content all in one place, where before you sort of had them scattered in their own little pockets. It reminds me a lot of the Anachrony box, where you were able to, with the new Anachrony Infinity box, all of the different character stuff for all of the expansions was in one place. So I hope that works well. We'll see. This new expansion, I really don't know a lot about it. It's not one that I'm like, oh, yes, this is all I've been waiting for. I'm so excited. No, I'm just kind of hoping that it's good, and it's one that we do play with every so often. So nothing crazy for expectations there. Our next game here is Darwin's Journey. Now, Darwin's Journey is another one that's been out, that's been waiting for a long time. This is one that was on Dan over at Chairman of the Board's most anticipated list. And it was on my list, I think, for 1 year, but I just forgot about this one for a long time. But it sounds like it's the encyclopedia theming. It's got this concept of you are upgrading your workers by giving them seals vehicles and moving them all along a variety of different tracks. I'll be honest, this is also one that I've totally forgotten about, based on its worker placement system. That was, I think, the initial thing that pushed us towards getting it. Plus, it was recommended by just a whole bunch of people. But we'll see when it shows up. This is one that has a production that's sort of insane. All of the different upgrades. There's like a mat that's stored in like a cartographer's kit, and the game itself looks fine. You've got different tracks that you're going on. It reminds me a lot of Newton, actually, with getting these little upgrade pieces, cards that are driving your actions, and then upgradable spots on the board. But it looks like it does have that worker placement function front and foremost. So I hope this one works well. The thing I'm most excited about it is I wish I could give you a straight answer on this one. I don't even know. So sorry about that. Can't tell you anything about that one. Ooh, that does not bode well for this one. Oh, the next game, though, I am thrilled for. If you saw my best of 2023, or most anticipated games of 2023, Primal topped the charts. So Primal looks amazing. This looks like a combination of so many games that I love. It's got Marvel Champions card play. You've got Kingdom Death Monster boss battling, but with such a small map of something like Too Many Bones. That's probably going to be the way that I refer to this one. It's my favorite games with a theme of Monster Hunter. That is so cool. I hope it comes out. We've got everything for it coming in. And the fact that you can play a small campaign or just a single one shot, you've got these gigantic monsters with their own unique ways of interacting with different characters. Yes, it's another miniatures game, but the fact that you're only playing with one miniature, it's in the center, you're jumping around it, activating your different abilities and cards, the cards that you craft and use in future games, that determines your deck and what you can actually do with your characters. And you can play it with any sort of configuration. This looks so good, but it's also, as you can tell, it's in that really long backlog. So a little frustrating there that it has taken so long to actually arrive. Yeah, that is Primal The Awakening. Whoops, I totally prepped Everdell, New Leaf, and Mistwood, but that has actually arrived, so I can skip that one. And next one here is, I don't know why I backed this. I think it was because of the multi-use functioning, and it looked like it was such a small publisher, and I wanted to support them. This is Scrumpy Card Cider. That's what it was. It was a cool deck building system where your cards are also your resources, and so there's this sweet form of this culling that occurs when you're gaining resources from your cards. So every time that you're playing stuff out onto the board, you're either going to be using it or it's going to slide under your different equipment. And that's going to decrease your actual deck, which I love. It sounded like Imperium Classics or Imperium Legends, with the way that it has a huge emphasis on the deck manipulation in addition to the engine building and the resource management. But this sounded so cool. And I like the theme as well. Apple cider is my favorite type of alcohol, personally. I think that the theme is cool and it makes sense. It's a multi-use card game. Sounds like it's a great package and a small footprint. And hey, it's a first-time designer, first-time publisher. It's one that I'd like to give a try. So that's Scrumpy Card Cider. I remember that this person had on their updates, it's another one that's going to be like indefinitely delayed. So I have no idea when this is actually going to show up, which is quite sad. The thing I'm most excited for, though, is honestly the card play. It looks like it's a lot of fun, and I hope that it eventually arrives. Next is a huge project. I think this is like the most expensive Kickstarter we backed in years. This is Mythic Battles Ragnarok. We did the all-in for not just this one, but also the all-in for the previous one. So Mythic Battles Pantheon. So that's all the Greek god stuff as well. So huge game. Don't know what's going to happen when it arrives. I have played this one, though, and I can say that it is a lot of fun. You have these characters that are obviously based in the mythology of the different times, and you're going to be able to smash them across different pantheons, which is so cool. I don't have a Greek god fighting each other game. I really want to play, what's it called, Cyclades? That sounds awesome, and it looks like it sort of fits that space. But Ragnarok looks amazing. You have this core system of a deck management action system where you're playing your cards, and you have this cool way that if you can essentially call and summon the abilities of different cards in your deck. And so if you do that, you are rushing towards the end of your deck super fast, though. And so you're constantly deciding between it being as optimal as you can with each different card play, or by rushing as fast as possible, which I think is awesome that the game allows you to play into both those strategies. And it encourages you to, which I love. There's ways to do both. This one has new solo and co-op scenarios, which I'm super excited for, but that head-to-head skirmish setting is also amazing. Now, the other thing that this one had were gigantic scenarios that involve some of the Nordic gods. If I can get to them down here. They're down here. Oh, there they are. Okay. So the huge pledge had not only the core box, but I'll get to the end here. It has these ridiculous maps for Surtur And Ymir, look at these guys. Oh my gosh, the miniatures. I'm not one to usually like fawn over miniatures, but look at this character. Ymir looks amazing. This looks so terrifying. They're those dashboards that I was talking about that show the different stats. And every time they take damage, you sort of slide them down so that everything's affected. I love that. But you also have your huge frost giants and Ymir, but you have Yormung, which is so cool. And then lastly, look at this guy, Certs. Oh, he looks so cool. Oh, look at this huge come at me, bro stance. Burning tokens. He has 2 scenarios in his booklet. I am thrilled. The fact that you're going to be able to incorporate this in your normal games, but also have scenarios that are revolving around it. I'm excited for this theme to be applied in general. This just looks like one that that's right up my alley. I love the Nordic theme, and let's have more skirmish games in it. Next is The Witcher Old World. This is also one that barely missed my most excited for this year. And this is set in the Witcher universe, obviously, but you are going to be playing in like prehistory as one of the earlier Witchers. You're going to be competing against the other Witchers, collecting different relics, traits, learning about monsters, and the whole system is driven by a card system that reminded me a lot of something from Tainted Grail, actually, where you're going to be playing cards and comboing them on each other. And based on that card play and combo play, you're going to be able to not only fight monsters, but you can also challenge your fellow players. So the Witcher theme put into a revamped board game looks like it's very much dedicated to bringing out that world. As you can see, there's a bunch of content here. And one of the biggest criticisms, though, of this was that the monsters felt a little similar. Apparently, some of the stretch goals and or expansions added new cards and new tokens that were going to give them a bit more flavor. So I love that they took that feedback into consideration and then took this one back to the drawing board. That's Witcher Old World. I'm excited to be in this world and have a board game that does it justice. Before I move on to the next one, I'm going to take a quick drink. Ooh, thank you so much for being here tonight. Once again, if you have any questions or comments or anything about the games that we're talking about here, let me know down below. I'm curious to hear what you think about these games. If you've heard about them, speaking about games that if you've heard about them, this next one is, I'm curious if you ever heard about this one. And I'll be honest, I don't know why we backed this one. And I think it had to do with maybe I saw a gameplay video of it. This is Soul Raiders. So Soul Raiders is very similar to something like I it honestly reminds me of Assassin's Creed a little bit, where you have your characters, you're moving them on a map, you're getting items. It's like generic exploration characters moving around. Even the name sounds a little bit generic. Soul Raiders. Sure, but it looks fine. It looks cool. It looks competent, and maybe that's why I liked it so much. Was it looked like it cut out and streamlined a lot of things and these huge campaign games and made it so that you could get into it and just start playing and having a good time. I think the focus was on you could shift between different characters. I think that's what it is. The soul, they can like project themselves. I think you can see it on this little miniatures here. And I might be totally out of my element on this one. I remember we backed this a year ago. I think this was last Christmas time is when this one was on Kickstarter. So luckily we're getting closer. So that's pretty cool. Maybe am I crazy? Who knows? They said they were going to deliver in December, so they are late, but I can't fault them too much because I forgot about them too. So that's so bad. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. Sorry, Soul Raiders. Next game we have here is Earthborne Rangers. This is one that I am so excited for. The design team is incredible. They make all of the awesome living card games, and they've created a new one in a post-apocalyptic setting. And this one here is a story-driven game, but in those single-shot scenarios, or you can link them campaign style. So it looks like a cool mix between the concept and philosophy of Marvel Champions, but also with the theory behind just the solid LCG deck building, where you're able to pick a color, and then you can fill out your character based on the colors that they are. And then with those cards, you have this interesting allocation system where your cards are played through the resources that you use to take actions. Or is that it? It's been years, I'm telling you. So it's been years. But this one here is, the team itself, the setting, everything about this just looks so cool. I don't think we have something in our collection that sort of has this vibe. And if I remember correctly, every one of these characters has just a unique play style, but because you can cross them, you can explore new venues that you wouldn't normally. It's one of the things I like in LCGs is where, yes, you have one card that's stuck in a color, but there's some characters that can play multicolor, and that leads to new deck building possibilities and potential. This one here has it so that you can play with everything is released at once. So there's no additional expansions or anything you have to hunt down. You have the core set. Of course, if the game does well, I imagine there will be more, but I like the fact that it's all here right now. You don't have to go out of your way or wait for extra waves or anything like that. So I hope that it's solid. I hope it's fun. And yeah, the theme is great. The team is great. It's in your hands, Earthborne Games. Next is Arydia, The Paths We Dare Tread. This also missed my most anticipated from this year. I'm curious if this will come out. It's another one of those huge projects that promises to have this open world, a save system that works, a customizable miniatures where even the heads pop on and off. Everything comes pre-painted, the same crew that did Zaya. And so I hope it's awesome. I hope it's awesome. The thing that I thought was the most interesting was the combat, actually, where whenever you encounter creatures, your weapons hit like tetrominoes in sort of a tic-tac-toe fashion. So it reminded me of Sleeping Gods, where you would go around and punch things, and based on your sequences of your different characters attacking, you could have it so that your different characters sort of overlap their attacks. You'll be able to equip items that obviously have the different shapes, but I think the big emphasis on this is the exploration and customization. So that's what I'm looking forward to most, actually, is the combat system. You can see the dice here. They sort of have that same shot, and I hope that it's one that is easy to play, pack up, and then bring right back out. I've heard some promises of games like Mythwind, where you can sort of play it however much you want. Arydia, I believe, has that same philosophy where you just keep playing over and over and over again, but I feel like this one is a bit more objective driven, and I think that's going to keep you coming back to it a little bit more. That's Arydia, The Paths We Dare Tread. Yeah, this one looks so good. I hope it does come out this year. Next is the Tanares RPG. Now, this is, I do want to mention quickly while we're doing this, is these are just Kickstarter games. I'm not going to talk about anything that came out on GameFound, nothing like that. It's just the games that I have on Kickstarter. There's like a list on Kickstarter where you can go through everything, and I think this video is already going to be long enough just talking about that. So we're going to talk about just the Kickstarter games here. So I'll probably make a part 2 to this video where we talk about the things that are on like GameFound and Indiegogo. We'll keep this one strictly Kickstarter. But the Tanares RPG here, we didn't actually get any of the RPG books. If you're familiar with the Tanares universe, they do Arena the Contest. So that's what we backed this one for. It was for the new characters and the new dragon miniature for Arena the Contest. So I'm not going to get too much into this one. All you need to know is it is a giant golden dragon. You have new characters, and the way that the game works is it's a arena combat game where you have 4 characters v 4 characters. And so having 8 new characters by itself is awesome because you can use them all in one sitting. And this is one of those games where if you get a bunch of characters, you will get them played because it's so easy to swap them in and out. I think that the game itself is awesome. My favorite way to play it is that skirmish 2-player mode. It's my favorite way. I'm not a big fan of the cooperative mode or the campaign myself. I found it to be a little boring, as you sort of had these scripted moves that you were going through, and the puzzles and the adventure itself just wasn't that interesting to me. I do like the world, so I hope that the RPG does well, but the gigantic golden dragon and just more characters for the game sound awesome. So excited to try this one, and I hope that it does well. This next one is another huge game, but this one is a little bit different. It's a Euro game from Mindclash. This is Voidfall. So Voidfall has you playing as a civilization. So you're this gigantic space civilization, and you'll be honestly doing the 4Xs. You'll be expanding around. You'll be building up your own industry, but in a unique Euro way that is all built around these dual purpose action cards. So you'll have these action cards that you'll play in front of you. And I remember it being awesome and intuitive, which is great for a Mindclash game. So a lot of these heavier games can get pretty overbearing when it comes to the ridiculous amount of icons, but I was quite impressed with Perseverance, Castaway Chronicles, and the Anachrony, as well as, what was the one that came before that? But there were a couple that just like so many hits in a row from Mindclash where I was like, okay, I'm kind of on board with everything that they're doing here. Their design philosophy is something that I'm accepting and just enjoying, and it's not overbearing. The rule books and the thematics of the game make it so they're not bearers to learn and teach and actually get played, which I love. You can start playing one of these and explain most of the rules tied into the theme, which is perfect. So I think Voidfall is going to be something similar, which I'm looking forward to. The fact that it has cooperative modes and competitive modes too is super cool. So it's sort of the whole package with the space theme. I'm excited to see Voidfall and Mindclash's take on one of these giant space adventure games. So that is Voidfall by Mindclash. Next is Man vs. Meeple Season 4. Now, the reason I backed this one had to do with the amount of promo content that was in it. This is one where, even if you don't like Man vs. Meeple, I think they're cool. I like that channel. You can have some amazing promos for your games. In particular, they had like little mini expansions that were straight up mini expansions that were all tossed into this giant bundle. One in particular, they had a Hadrian's Wall expansion where they had entire new sets of the scoring criteria cards, the path cards. That's amazing. That's so much content for like $1 because you're paying, I think it's $60, but you get like 40 different promos, something like that. And a lot of them are those gigantic all-in packs, which is amazing. So hopefully it turns out to be well. You could have gotten game bundles, but I just went for the different promos because you just get so many things. Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, we had, I think, 30 of the 40 games in the library at the time we backed it. So the value seemed pretty insane. And it's always fun when you get promos like this. You get to take a look at all of the different little things as you're playing. Like, oh, I remember when we got this. This is excellent. I remember that. So there it is, that Hadrian's Wall mini expansion. You got the Critters at War, the foil cards, more stuff from Mosaic. Oh, so cool. So hopefully everything works well here. What is this? For Now or Never. I don't even know if they have cards that look like that. Maybe that's an overlay or something. I'm excited for this one. So hopefully those come in pretty soon because I know I have a feeling they had their season 5 out pretty recently. Hopefully they're able to get these two backers relatively soon. So most excited, obviously, I honestly think the thing I'm most excited for is that Hadrian's Wall one though. Next is Final Girl Series 2. So this has all new boxes for Final Girl. Now, we've actually received half of this already. We received the storage box for the first one. Initial impressions on the storage box for the first series, don't really like it that much. I think it kind of sucks, actually. The characters are like, the miniatures of the characters are in a separate box of the core components. So it's actually increased the setup time by having these spread out into multiple boxes. I wish that they didn't do that. I wish that they just increased or maybe gave us another core box and just made that bigger and had the selection there. Because now if I want to actually use the box that's supposed to hold the miniatures, I have to open up all these different compartments. It's harder to actually get them out of this storage box that it came with. And that sucks. It was really unfortunate because I got it and I was like, oh, that's really not that great. So I was a little frustrated with that. I do like that they give you a box for the it's the bird one. So there's an expansion that's like the really small, like a vignette expansion. It's the terror of the birds, terror from above. That's what it's called. So they have one of those, which is nice that they're able to put it in a box, but everything else just sort of is squeezed in a little too tight. So I'm not sure if I'm actually going to keep that original box, the large storage box, but the new feature films in this are killer. They've got Alien, they have The Thing. Look at these, they look so cool. And just the idea of having, not only, you can see it here, you can see the location boards and the boards themselves. The idea of having a Thing related board sounds so much fun to me, where you're going to be testing and scanning the different characters to see if they are in fact the enemy that you're going to be trying to defeat. That's so cool. You can see it here, the organism board. I'll zoom in a little bit there. How awesome is that? So that's what I'm most excited for. And overall, I'm just excited to have the different combinations and new ideas to be introduced into the Final Girl world. So I won't spend too much time on this, as Final Girl itself is already an awesome game. And this is just more of Final Girl. So I'm excited overall. I want to play more Final Girl. So that is Final Girl Series 2. Next, we have Skytear Horde. And this also is in that same area where they should be delivering any day, and they're running through Fun Again, but Fun Again is doing that thing where they're closing, so everything's taking a little bit longer than anticipated. This looks amazing. This is a cooperative solo card game where you are playing out different characters onto a tower defense lane style game, but the presentation is ridiculous. Just look at this box. This means that you are going to be able to open it up, get it played, just put out the mat, all the resources. I love stuff like this, where they're actively getting you to play the game. But the game itself looks engaging and fun. You have those different characters from different classes. You're combining them, you're putting them out, they're charging at you, and you're using your cards and resources as efficiently as possible to repel these evil forces. Special abilities, unique powers, combos based on the cards. This has sort of everything you'd want from a card game, but with that presentation style that is is something that I like from Kickstarter, where they're able to create a premium product for you. So that is Skytear Horde. Excited for the entire package. Next is Marvel Zombies, and I got to be honest with you, this is one I'm having a lot of fun with. Marvel Zombies has come, and I've been playing a lot of it these last couple of weeks. And the game itself is awesome, but I'm already wanting more content, if we're being honest. And luckily, there's a bunch of it because this has all sorts of new heroes, new scenarios, and I just want to play with more combinations of heroes. So right now, the biggest criticism that I have with this game is instead of getting a bunch of different abilities from items, you are getting traits, which all have hunger related effects, which is cool. But the heroes themselves have like pre-printed effects, and there are not as many to choose from when it comes to unique characters. In the original Zombicides, when you leveled up, you had maybe like 3 or 4 options for each of the different character level ups. But in this one, every time you level up with, say, Captain America, your 3rd level ability is going to be the same each time you play him. Your 4th level ability each time is going to be the same. That being said, the abilities are thematic, interesting, and fun, but they just don't have the huge amount of variety per hero card. Now, as mentioned before, I don't think this is going to be an issue in the long run because you do play 4 heroes at a time. And then when you do play them, you're going to have all this expansion content that you won't know what to do with it. And so you're going to have so many different zombie heroes to pick from. Look at all these. Oh my gosh, X-Men, Fantastic Four, everybody is going to be zombified. So you're not going to have any issue with getting that variety or replayability because it's going to be printed on all of those different cards. But look at these. The coolest thing about this game, though, is the fact that push your luck is in everything in this game. I love that so much. So every single action that you take has some form of risk, and I love that. It makes the game challenging, fun, and tense the entire experience, and it makes hard scenarios as equally tense as those easier scenarios. So I've been having such a fun time with Marvel Zombies. One of my biggest surprises so far from the last couple of months. Oh, look at that. Look how cool that is, Giant Man Zombie. I am excited. Oh, and the art is awesome, by the way. The art is straight from the Marvel Zombies comic books. And so they've taken inspiration clearly for some of the maybe original art that they do here. And it's so good. So Marvel Zombies, I want to play more of this game. I've heard that some other good Zombicide stuff has come out recently. Undead or Alive apparently is really good. Yeah, Zombicide is on a roll currently as far as I'm concerned. Next is another roll and write game. This is a small one. This is also in that same limbo period as Skytear Horde. This is Motor City. So this is similar to Three Sisters and Fleet, where you are doing lots of combos, playing different dice into different areas, but there's a new action selection system. And I think the linchpin here that's going to get this one played probably even more than the other two, depending if the core game is good or not, is the fact that they have a small mini expansion. If I can find it here. Aha, there it is, the certificates expansion, where you're actually going to be placing these certificates on your main game board, and that changes your scoring criteria for the game. I'll let you think about that real quick. We get another drink. So good. So the criteria of the scoring is going to change each time, which means the implication of every single action you take is going to be different. I love this so much because it allows you to explore on the same sort of bonus action and action sheet, but with different implications and weights to the different actions. Yes, I love when games do this, and the fact that they just simply go on top is so easy to play with. You just kind of shuffle them out and deal them to the players. Love this so much. So that's the kind of expansion that I want, and that's definitely the thing I'm most excited for, is the fact that it looks like the replayability is out of the roof on this one. And that was the one thing that I wish that would change from something like Fleet or Three Sisters, where you still have every option is sort of available to you in equal strength each time you play. So that is one thing that I wish it was a little bit different, where maybe the scoring would change in those games. It's why I like Hadrian's Wall so much, is the scoring criteria and the objective system in that solo campaign series. The next game here is Western Legends Big Box. Now this one is, I'm not going to talk about it much because I didn't actually get the big box. For this one, I actually only got the promos that came with it. So I was just here for the gameplay content. I'm pretty happy with the way that we have it stored right now. And the big box also came in the form of a broken token wooden insert style thing, where you had this giant crate that you were going to have to assemble, or you could pay extra to have it shipped assembled. And a lot of times I've been using these inserts, and I just don't like them. The more I play with them, the more I think that some of them stink. I think some of them are terrible. Some of them are incredible. There's a Caverna insert that's a wooden one that is amazing. The original Gloomhaven insert, amazing. That makes setup and teardown a breeze. But I had the Spirit Island one, and it was awful. I hated it. It made setup take forever. It straight up reduced some of the playability of some of the original game, and I disliked it greatly. I'm trying to sell it, actually. I have it with like all the games that I'm trying to sell it. I can see it right here. It's mocking me because nobody wants it. But I have this insert for Spirit Island over there that just needs to go. But the expansion here also came with some extra promos. There they are, the big box promo pack. So luckily, don't actually have to get the giant big box to get these. So that's all I'm going to talk about right now. A couple of extra cards and a couple of extra characters. Awesome. More variability for a game I like. Next game here is the Ares Expedition Discovery modules. So you have 3 different modules: Discovery, Foundation, and Crisis. So this one is playing into what I think is Ares Expedition's strengths. I think the best part of Ares Expedition, and the reason I rank it so highly, is its cooperative and solo play. I love the push your luck version of the solo mode. I love the cooperation coordination of the cooperative mode, and the fact that they are leaning into that with one of the expansions as a whole. Amazing. I hope that it's great. The other thing that they add are just more cards. I don't know why they added a new resource. So there's this new support resource. We saw that it didn't go so hot with Venus, so I'm curious to see. Oh, it's not a resource, it's a parameter. So I'm not sure why they did that, but they do have these award tiles and milestones, which I think are perfect. So I think that's something that people were asking for, and it makes sense to include them. It reminds me of the first Race for the Galaxy expansion anyway. But the coolest thing I'm most excited for are these upgraded phase cards. This is so smart. It's something that's awesome in something like Arc Nova, where you have cards that you're using consistently and often, and now you have the options to actually upgrade them. And the coolest thing about this is you don't just have one choice. You got 2 choices for each card, which each have different implications and way that they're going to impact your strategy. Love this so much. And oh man, could you imagine if they did something like this for Arc Nova, where they had different action cards for different players or different upgrade paths for your action cards? There's so much to think about in just that small mechanism. What a great idea. So excited for that one. That is Ares Expedition Discovery, Foundations, and a Crisis. Next one here is a sequel to a game that I just played recently, and it is such a good system. I like this game a lot, and I hope that the sequel is also impressive. This is Tidal Blades 2, Rise of the Unfolders. Now, Tidal Blades 2 is not the same. It's not a worker placement game at all. This is a dungeon crawl in a book. So think something like Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. But it also combines that thing we talked about earlier with Monumental, where you're playing these cards in front of you and then activating the different grids. So you have a lot of choice in what you're playing, when you're playing, and what you're activating. I love the fact that you have items that you're tapping into, but only so many at a time. So placement is equally as important. I love when you incorporate mechanisms like that into campaign games. So the artwork and world building of this game is incredible, but the idea that you're going to have a campaign game set in this world sounds a lot of fun. I love this concept of you not just have one book, but you have 2 and they combine together. Perfect. It allows you to have that awesome art on the inside, but you're not accidentally stepping on the spiral bound notebook. So it actually helps with the board. And then, as I mentioned before, there's that activation grid that's in front of you. Not a lot more that I can tell you about this besides that I love the world of this game. I think that the entire idea of this, taking the tournament arc and now going into the actual adventure, that sounds super fun. And the thing I'm most excited for is just being in this world a little bit more. So that is Tidal Blades 2, Rise of the Unfolders. Next game here is Arcs, and this was also on my most anticipated list for this year. It's another Cole Wehrle design from Leader Games, where you are playing a trick-taking game that has an arc to it. So the arc is in the form of a short campaign of 3 games, where you are going to take your results from one and go to the next. So I like this idea of a very small campaign game, and using trick-taking to drive it means that you are going to constantly be engaged during this experience. On top of that, we've received updates from their emails saying that, hey, this company has taken some more time than expected on this game, which I'm always for when it comes to refining the experience. I know they did it with Root, and Arc seems like they've done the same way, but they did not do it with Oath. And I think that Oath could have used a little bit more time, particularly in the action system. And that's even something that they talked about. They said, hey, we were going to make Oath a single turn action game where you're just going one at a time. But because of the development process and where it was with COVID, they had to just stick on something and then decide and go with it. And I think that Oath would have been a more gripping and engaging game if it had that turn sequence where everybody was constantly engaged. And I think that's what Arcs has here, where you have that trick-taking system, so you're able to follow, lead, and I believe you can ignore the action suits. You can sort of play a wild or whatever, but you get less of a bonus, so you're encouraged to follow with appropriate cards to take additional actions of the same type. So I like that there is still choice, but with a negative or with a bonus. So I think that Arcs has a lot of potential to be an amazing game, and the fact that it's sporting this simplified system, but with that smaller campaign and just the smaller game mechanisms as a whole, I hope this one is awesome. The art is wonderful. I think the entire system here looks fun and cool. Arcs, I'm excited for this one. Next one is a game that I love. I think it's so much fun. We were playing the other day, and I was like, "Oh, we could have played Batman." This is Batman: Gotham City Chronicles. I love this game at the 2-player count, at the 3-player count, 4-player count. It is a fun time. I like this game a lot. It's got a lot of bad rep because of the scenarios that they tell you to start with, which is kind of unfortunate. I think they are some of the weaker ones, but there are a lot of scenarios here that definitely feel like Batman. And whenever I get a chance to play it, I'm always having a blast. We played one recently where I was playing as the Suicide Squad. So the entire Suicide Squad versus who was it? The Gotham PD. That's who it was. Suicide Squad with the Gotham PD. And we're using some of the season 2 stuff where they had Commissioner Gordon, and I forget what it was. It was the future Commissioner Gordon. So he also had like this Bat robot that was with him. It was so cool. And it was such a great scenario. I think Poison Ivy was able to do like one of her abilities was she could control somebody for a turn. She would do like the poisonous kiss and then get them onto your side for a turn. Oh, it was so fun. But anyway, this expansion, the greatest thing about this is the fact that they are going to be adding a solo cooperative mode and then completely revamping the entire system. So you're going to be able to not only be a bit more approachable as an entire game system, but everything is legible, clear. You got iconography and cards. We have like a pre-printed thing where all of our references are for each character. So everybody, if it's their first time playing, it's easy for them to just look at this reference sheet and understand who they're playing, what they're doing. It looks like they've taken that idea and put it to heart and done it for every single character, including the new expansion content, which is perfect. I think this is exactly what this game needed, just something to make it a little bit more accessible and approachable while still retaining the Batman core. The game itself is pretty dang simple, so the fact that there were so many barriers to learning and playing it is pretty unfortunate. So hopefully that I hope that the solo and co-op works, and the fact that it is retroactive to all of the current expansions and experiences means that you're going to get to play everything, and that just means I get to play more Batman. So I love this game. Excellent game. That is Batman Gotham City Chronicles. Next is another Mind Clash game. This is Septima, another one that nearly missed that best of the most anticipated for deliveries this year. This is set in a witch coven where you are going to cooperatively actually be playing with your different, well, I guess semi-cooperatively. There are actions where you can be beneficial to everybody. So I guess it's in the same vein as if Terra Mystica was cooperative, so not cooperative. But there are actions where you can follow, you can lead, you can work with other people to gain different bonuses and effects, but ultimately you are trying to get the most powerful spells for your coven. You can train up familiars, you can send them out to the different towns, but you're trying to keep your characters safe because I don't know if you're familiar, but people don't really like witches. So you want to make sure that your coven is also being safe while you're gathering all of these ridiculous ingredients and potions and whatnot. So I like the idea of a simple action system with a following mechanism and a more simplified Mind Clash game. I mentioned it before. I think that the game itself is, it is semi-co-op. I did say the right one. But I like the fact that it is the same Mind Clash production and system and theming, but the gameplay seems to be a little bit lighter and a little bit more approachable. So sounds cool to me. A game that's just a bit more easier to table in the Mind Clash setting. I'll take it. Next is the expansion for Foundations of Rome. This one here is the Roads of Fortune? Yes, Roads of Fortune. So this is so fun because they wanted to keep everything in the box. So what they did was they basically made an expansion that just goes on top of your board, which is so funny to me because they were like, okay, yeah, you can just slide it in that top little section of your organizer. So that works. All of the other stuff works with that same thought in mind. But the premise of this expansion is they're making the outside of the board more enticing, so you get extra bonuses for doing so, which is cool. I think that makes sense because honestly, those places were just not as flexible as the others, and you weren't really going to be claiming those areas unless you already had stuff that was connected that you could play off of. So a very simple expansion it's more, to me, feels like just a way to reprint the game. But a simple expansion that fits into the core box. They have a new revamped insert, which is great. I think the original was lacking just a bit, but new revamped insert, new scoring markers where the originals were just cubes and there'd be awkward moments where you'd have to stack them on top of each other. But this one has, let me see if I can find it. There they are. Actual little things that you can slot onto each other because it does happen more often than you would think, particularly with 5 players. It's sort of low scoring in those earlier rounds. And then as the game progresses, then you start to branch off. So it keeps it a little bit more organized. I also bought an extra one of the first player markers because I think it's awesome. And I think it works really well in Glory to Rome because in that game, you're generally passing a card around to say who's first, but now you got a cool statue. It's like, boom. And I think that sounds awesome. I think it works perfect and it looks good in Foundations of Rome. I don't know why it wouldn't look good in Glory to Rome either. Whew. Next game here is Dead Reckoning Letters of Mark. This is an AEG title. This one was it was a good game from this year. I'd rate it about the same that I rate Endless Winter from this past year. It is fun to play, but it's not going to be the one that I ask to play all the time. Uh, the Dead Reckoning game itself, though, is quite fun in the idea of card crafting. I think it's one of my favorite heavy card crafting games. And the fact that you can just hold on to a single card and just keep on upgrading it, that is super satisfying when you have a super powered card. And you can pick any card. Every card is awesome. So there's so many different routes to actually picking useful cards. So you're going around the islands, picking up cards to upgrade your own deck, and then consistently playing them to take actions on the board. You're doing some area control, you're doing some combat with this cool cube mechanism. The game itself also has a campaign expansion, similar to something like Maracaibo, where you're just throwing in cards, and every time that you play, you'll just continue where you left off. And I don't think it's anything crazy to learn and just go in, just add some extra story, which I think is awesome. This adds more of the new cards for the legacy system, so you just have another expansion to go into, which is great. It just means that you're just going to keep on exploring and adding little bits of content every single time you play. But it also adds these new here you go, you also the Saga expansion, as mentioned before, but you're also going to have a brand new set of sailor cards. So these cards are going to give you special abilities and give you some diversification as well as asymmetry at the start of the game, whereas in the original you had that with some of the sea dogs, but it looks like this has a little bit more than we expected with the Sea Dogs. So I'm excited to try this one. I think that it adds some things that people were asking for originally, which makes sense to me. So that is the Letters of Mark for Dead Reckoning. Next here is a solo game from Garphill Games. This is Legacy of You. This one is exactly what you think. It's going to be a game that's built for solo play, but it's also a campaign system. I love this thought of a game that is solo first, from a company that puts out some amazing solo modes. So I love the Paladin solo mode. I think that the Hadrian's Wall solo mode is amazing. And I think that this one, since it's being built from the ground up as a solo experience, it sounds very promising. I think that the designers do a great job in making experiences that are engaging but do feel a little solo in nature, and I think that's perfect for this space. So I don't know a lot about the gameplay or anything on that front, but I do trust this company. I think they put out some pretty dang good products. I've actually been having a lot of fun with Wayfarers of the South Tigris recently, and it's one that I am returning back to, not necessarily in the solo capacity. I still think it's a little weak there, but in the 4-player experience, I think that Wayfarers has been pretty fun. So I think that this one is hopefully going to fill that solo gap that Wayfarers left. So that is Legacy of You. Next game here is a gigantic project. This is Dune War for Arrakis. This has you playing as one of the groups of factions fighting for Dune. You're either going to be the Fremen and the Atreides, or you'll be the Harkonnen and the Emperor. It's designed by the same person who did Lord of the Ring. You are taking a more approach from the book, whereas like Dune Imperium is obviously inspired by the movies. This one has the art that's straight from the creative minds from the book, which I think is really cool. You'll have the entire map of Arrakis here, the locations that you're familiar with if you've played any of the other Dune board games or if you like the source material. I'll be honest with you, I have not read the original Dune source material. I've gotten through like a halfway of the first book, which is hilarious because I've also only seen the first half of the new movie. But I love this world. I think that the new movie is pretty dang amazing. And so just being immersed in this sounds amazing. I know that they've taken some time to do some revamps on the combat and the abilities of the leaders in this one. If I remember correctly, people were feeling that they didn't get enough from the variety from the leaders. So I'm glad that they took that into consideration. It's always good when something's on Kickstarter and they do have those initial impressions, so people do have time to critique it, review it, and then put some modifications to it to make it a better game. Obviously, it doesn't work all the time. See Trudvang earlier, but sometimes it does work. So hopefully this is one of those cases. You've got some special expansions that are only for Kickstarter, which is awesome. So happy that we're going to be able to get those. And seeing that this one is going to be playing at a 2-player and a solo player count, it looks like this is one that's going to get tabled quite a bit, which means you can actually get that expansion content played. So there's a lot to love about the War for Arrakis here, a streamlined system that takes those grand steps of the Dune universe I'm looking forward to this one a lot. Next is another version of Terraforming Mars. This is Terraforming Mars, the dice game. So the dice game here offers a simplified system of collecting resources and tags in the Terraforming Mars style. So if you're familiar with the original game, most of your cards that you're playing generate resources of some type. It looks like in this case, the cards that you're going to be playing generate dice, and then you'll get to roll those dice and then allocate them to take your different actions. So I think it's awesome in general. I love the solo modes of the previous games, and I think that this one, having that fact, having it there in a short playtime, looks fun to me. As mentioned before, you're going to be producing, you're going to be getting different actions, and then you're going to be playing different cards. So you're constantly engine building and then using that engine. That's something that I enjoy. We can actually use your engine as opposed to having to neglect it for a big portion of the game or just ignoring it altogether. That seems kind of unfortunate to me. So I like that they're leaning into this and pushing you towards terraforming the planet, but also gaining a bunch of dice and then using those dice. I'm looking forward to this one. I think there's nothing to dislike. Actually, that's not true. There's one thing to dislike. They created a brand new size of sleeve for this game, and they made a brand new awkward size of card, and that's kind of annoying. So not something that I'm looking forward to, but hey, I hope that the game is good and the dice look cute. Next is the expansion for Wonderland's War, a very small expansion. This is Shards of Madness. It's also a way to get the original game. You can late pledge, so that's still a thing. If you miss this one out, I love this game. I think it's so much fun. This is one of my favorites from last year. But the expansion is a brand new set of cards for the Wonderlandians. So they've completely replaced all of the effects, given it a new sort of, what do you call that when something's black and white, when it's inversed? Well, I'm sure that somebody will tell me in the comments, but you have this inverse color scheme, but just with brand new cards. And it looks like all of the cards embrace the madness mechanism. So you're going to have these brand new things that are going to push you to take more negative points and potentially take more of those bust tokens, which is awesome. You'll also have some new starting cards, which is lovely. This is going to give you new asymmetric setup, which is great. So you take a look here. You actually get to start with some Wonderlandians, which is awesome. That means that everyone's going to have some cool character from the beginning. I love that. One of my favorite things to do in the game is just get new Wonderlandians because I just like having units nobody else does. So the fact you start with one means that maybe I'll spread my wings a little bit. They also gave some new reworkings towards Jabberwock and the Mad Hatter because I think Jabberwock is a little underpowered. Mad Hatter was a little bit overpowered. And then the last things that they added were new dice in order to track the strength of the different characters. And then they also added bases to the different characters so you could put them on your Wonderlandians to show who actually owns them, which I think makes a lot of sense. And I'm kind of curious that they didn't have it in the original. This game has a lot of inspiration from something like Blood Rage, where you have those unique abilities and powers that you draft during the early half. And so the fact that they didn't have the rings in the early portions of the, I guess, expansion creation, I think that makes sense that they add them here. So you got a lot of different choices to get for Wonderland's War, and the fact that it's pretty affordable if you already own everything is awesome, but it's also an opportunity to get all the stuff that you were missing. So I'm excited for this in general. It's just improving a game that I already love. So that is Wonderland's War, Shards of Madness. Before we get into this next one, I'm going to take another drink. Next is Mosaic Wars and Disasters. This is for that premium Colossus edition. So you can get the one that's Colossus, or you can get the War and Disasters. I believe that they work with both. I think that the Colossus one just has those miniatures that the original one had. This is also a reprint and sort, so you get the giant version of Mosaic. This just adds a more big impact on the combat. And the original combat was sort of just a form of area control of putting out different pieces in the different regions, and it only scored every time one of these Empire scoring cards came out. And so that was something that was a little bit more abstracted than some people liked. Me, I thought it was fine. I thought it worked out well. It was a system where it was not intrusive. It made sense. You were going to be putting out these different cards and characters, and you could focus on everything. It wasn't the whole game where something like Through the Ages, for example, if you didn't do military and somebody caught you not doing military, there was no way you were going to win. It was brutal. Someone could just have like a war late game and take all your stuff. It was the worst. So the fact that they're adding a thing for military, if people want that, awesome. This is a modular expansion in nature. You're also going to have disasters, which are going to introduce some random negative events. I know some people dislike that. Some people like that. If it has some positive twist to it, I'm excited for that. Maybe like game-changing effects, but nothing that's just like, hey, everybody get punched in the gut. And then obviously that's going to affect some players worse than others. That's something that I don't really want. So hopefully it has some of those blanket changes to the experience, maybe at like the beginning of the game or later. That sounds intriguing to me, but overall, I think the expansion itself sounds good. It sounds like it's something that was maybe removed from the initial game and then put into an expansion idea instead. Next up, we have the Oathsworn Into the Deepwood reprint. This one we got for a couple of the additional extras and expansions. This one in particular had some metal dice that you could get for the game. It does have that reprint, of course, and Oathsworn is a game that I do enjoy a lot. The combat and the dice system is so much fun, and the fact that the dice system is everywhere in this game makes it one that you are going to come back to again and again. You pick as many dice as you want, essentially, roll them up, and if you have 2 misses, you fail the skill test. But if you get only 1 miss, then you get to count up all your stuff, and it feels so good. It means that when you count stuff, you're just feeling awesome because you're just adding to your successes. It's a great feeling. You also have this cool combination of these combat cards that you can mix, sort of like the attack modifier deck for Gloomhaven, but it's optional if you want to. I love that so much. So for this expansion content, we essentially got the metal dice. We got some of the, what was it? We did all the add-ons, essentially all of the new add-ons. So there was an upgrade pack for the original. That's what it was. There's an upgrade packs with some like fixes to typos and errors and additional things. This is probably going to show you what we got. Here we go. All right. So yes, we got, I don't think I got the dice tray. I did not get the pouch. I got the secret box, I got premium dice, and I got the upgrade pack. So those are the 3 things that I got. The reason I didn't get the pouches was the pouches make sense if your things that you were putting in the pouches weren't cards and miniatures that break apart. So I don't know why this exists, because everything else is sort of just like the animus tokens, your hit point die, and I think that's it that could go. Oh, I guess your battle tokens, but you sort of reset those at the end of every combat. So most of the things that are going to the characters are cards. And from my experience, putting cards into leather bags just doesn't work very well. It's kind of awkward. It actually makes it so that the game takes up more space. And so I found it way easier to just put all the cards together and then you just have it there. This is coming from the person who tries to maximize setup time and maximize everything, but this also damages the cards because you have everything there, and particularly the minis fall apart if you don't do it. So I think these bags are a bad idea. I did not like this idea at all, so didn't get them. Then the extra stuff, though, the advanced dice, yes, you're rolling those all the time. So if you can get more dice, fancy looking dice, heck yes, that sounds great. So I think that's the biggest reason that we backed this, was the dice look amazing. They've got this cool like marble color to them. So that's what we ended up getting here. So yeah, excited for the dice because that dice system's so good. So you might as well have amazing quality dice for that dice check. The next game here is Cthulhu Death May Die, Fear of the Unknown. Now this one in particular has to do with adding new ways to adjust the difficulty for the original Death May Die. This original game is amazing, frankly speaking. It's my favorite in this genre of customizable scenario games, bringing that madness in. I think it's my favorite Cthulhu game. Even beating out Arkham Horror, I think that the one-shot nature of this game is so incredible, and the arc that occurs throughout the game and the level up experience and progression of it, it's genius. I think this game is fantastic. So that is Death May Die, but Fear of the Unknown adds new ways to modulate the difficulty. You can make it easier by introducing relic cards that give you special powers. The more insane you get, the more powerful they become. And then you also have these new monsters. And one cool thing about the monsters is not only does it make it a little bit harder by adding these new abilities and creatures from different scenarios, but you will also be able to use all of your content again from those original scenarios. One of the criticisms from the original was the game would come with these, maybe, for example, fire vampires, and only 2 scenarios would use the fire vampires, and then they would just sit there and not get used for the rest of the game, whereas you're using the cultists all the time or the ghouls all the time. In this case, you now take all of the different characters and creatures, you shuffle them into a single random monster deck, and then every time you play, you'll flip them over and see what new monsters are joining your game, which is another layer of extra variability to the game and just making it a little bit more challenging with these terrifying new characters being introduced. I love the new Elder Ones, new episodes, new scenarios. This is a game that I've played through 3 times completely, all of the current content. So it's one that is going to get played when it arrives. And oh yes, the lost episodes are some of the best scenarios designed, in my opinion, personally, which is a shame because they are relegated to those like expansion boxes. But the fact that you can late pledge this and get those scenarios, this is the time. And they're those unknown monster cards that I was talking about. Love this so much. This game is incredible. And yeah, I want to play more of it. Next one here is a little quirky game, and I think that this is going to be fun for my kids at the middle school. This is the Fun Brick series. So this is a collection of different games, and in particular, they have one that is a couple that are actually designed by what's his name? Reiner Knizia. So Reiner Knizia has a couple that he has designed himself in this one. So we have, I think it's Viking Seesaw and Ninja Master are the ones that are by Reiner Knizia. So those are the two that I got because I actually know that designer. One is Viking Seesaw. It looks adorable. I mean, you have these cute little pieces. They did a feature on it on BGG a while ago, but it looks cute, little stacking game. Ninja Master looks ridiculous. You'll have these dice that you're throwing into the center, and I believe that you're like racing to pick them up. So it has an element of real time, which is probably not going to be for everybody, but I think that with this packaging with the right group and with children, honestly, I think this one will be a lot of fun. So coming from some designers, a designer that I like a lot of his stuff, I hope that it's good. You also have some other ones here, 3-second try. I'm not sure how I feel about this. You have a timer that's only 3 seconds. That's the ball. Didn't get this one. It looked a little finicky for me. And some of the other ones were very similar to that. It looked like they weren't going to go very far for me. You had a bidding one that seemed very one note, as well as, let's look at this last one, Judge Domino. This is sort of another bidding auction game using domino pieces. So I wasn't too impressed by those, but the other two did look like a lot of fun, being straightforward while also seeming like they had a lot of potential for exciting and fun times. So that was the Fun Brick series. Oops, one moment. Okay, next game here is this is all Paperback Adventures' fault. So this is Slay the Spire, the board game. So Paperback Adventures, if you're unfamiliar with, is one of my favorite games in a long time. I like the game a lot. But Slay the Spire, the board game, tells me that it's going to be the Slay the Spire experience, which is a great video game. I like this video game a lot, and it's going to take it and put it into a cooperative board game. That sounds so much fun. Getting to level up your characters, move around, fight different characters, get new artifacts, like casually and gradually leveling up your characters from mini encounter after mini encounter with multiple people. That sounds awesome. I'll use Paperback Adventures for the solo experience and then Slay the Spire for the multiplayer experience. It also removes that layer of having to kind of plan and think the words that some people may not be super interested in. So that's something that's also just to be aware of. Not everybody's going to like a word game, and I think that's something to be aware of. Mom Gamer, thank you for joining us here on live. Happy to have you, and happy to have you twice. So we're honestly, I'm looking at the back projects. We only have a couple left. You're coming just at the end of our stream. This is our third from last. It's been a long one, but I think that this video needed to get out, because there's a lot of backlogged, outstanding Kickstarters for this channel. Thing I'm most excited for, though, of this game overall, it's the cooperative nature. I think it sounds so much fun to have that experience and be able to share it with others. I think that the two-player was lacking in Paperback Adventures, clearly not as good as the solo, which was definitely intended for, but this one looks like it's built from the ground up to scale well to multiple players. You still get the same feelings and ideas from the card game that you play on the app. You still get that idea of the different relics and cards and little powers and abilities that stack up over and over again. But the cherry on top here is you can play with others. And I think that is awesome. I hope that it works well. That's Slay the Spire. Our last game. Oh, no, sorry, not last game. Second to last game. This is Clash of Decks Season 3, a game that I have played a lot of in this last year and have been having a lot of fun with. This is Clash of Decks. It is a small little dueling game that's all based around a hand of 8 cards. So you're going to have this little tiny hand of cards, and every turn, your hand determines how much mana you get. And you'll be playing out these cards in front of you. It's a small, little lane-based game where you have 2 lanes. And if you're able to punch through one of the lanes, you can hit your opponent's life points. But the life points are tied to a card that's in one of the hands. And so you'll slide it to the back of your hand, and then if it eventually gets to the very end, it gets damaged, and then it flips, and then it gets back to the front. And so you're trying to make sure that you can manage these different areas in your hand, but also on the board. And that mana system of if you're far behind, your creatures die and they go back into your hand, which means you get more energy to play your cards going forward. So love that. Hey, Priscilla, good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. And yeah, thank you for being here. We're just wrapping up the stream. But the expansion content in this one has these new standalone packs, and that's something to be aware of. Every single Clash of Deck expansion is standalone. It's a single deck, and you're going to have that be its own unique experience, which I love. The fact that you just pick one of the expansions, you're playing with that. But if you want to, you can cross your different expansions. You can have one person draft from this one deck to build their army. You can have the other person draft from the other. You can have like a point army where you figure out what the amount is to play with. My favorite way to play it, though, is I love the solo experience of this. I think that it works perfectly. You have this initial draft phase where you're building up your hand of cards, and then you play them out, and you have to get through the entire, every single card you didn't pick, you have to fight against, which I love. You're building a hand of 8, but that means that the opponent is getting a hand of 24 different cards that you're going to be going through. But of course, their weakness is they don't get to pick the order in which they play them. They play it through an AI system. I love that so much, and just more content for Clash of Decks seems excellent. I do want to play more of the competitive game because, as mentioned before, it's one that I play a lot of in the solo capacity, but the competitive game is a lot of fun too. The fact that you are constantly worried about the different abilities, and there are some cards that interact very interestingly with the competitive mode. One of the coolest keywords is mercenary. So they're these cards that are blatantly overpowered, but if you use them, they go into your opponent's hand. That is such a cool concept. In the solo mode, I don't really like playing with those because if your opponent uses them, you get them, and it's kind of busted. And then you just sort of hold on to it. It's like you gained an extra life essentially. And then when you need to, you can play it and just attack and sort of get around it. But in the competitive mode, those mercenary cards are ridiculous. So this adds new keywords, adds new decks, new special abilities. You can see they feature there's 8 brand new keywords, which is awesome. So excited for this game. I think it already has proven that it's going to be one that gets played a lot. So it's Clash of Decks Season 3. Yes, this is awesome. They actually, I believe they have all this stuff on their website, the current existing expansions, and it's pretty dang cheap. I think you can buy everything for like less than $40 for like the initial 8 expansions. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm just misremembering, but I remember that I got the original one and picked up one of the expansions and sort of fell in love with it after I kept on combining them and doing the solo more. It was a lot of fun. So, and it's super small, easy to pack around. I have all of ours fully sleeved in like a single box. So it's like the same size as like a small box. So excellent. Yeah, super good. This last one here is the most recently backed. This is the expansion for one of the Valeria games. This is going to be Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria. This is a small dice drafting game where you're going to be allocating dice into different areas as sort of a worker placement style. Sorry, you're allocating yourself with a small worker to collect dice in different areas, and based on the dice that you take, you're going to be able to activate different actions. So this expansion adds new special abilities to that game. It also adds a brand new game, Guild Academies of Valeria. I did not get Guild Academies of Valeria. So a lot of the other Valeria games have been sort of hit or miss for me. Shadow Kingdoms is by far my favorite out of all of them, but the fact that the Shadow Kings had an expansion, that's when I knew I wanted to get, because I enjoyed the original so much, and it looks like this expansion offered something that I was going to get played. It adds new champions that you can get, new award cards, expeditions, which adds exploration to the game, which I am super excited to try. And then lastly, as I was mentioning, some asymmetry with the different characters. So you'll put one of these onto your board. It'll give you some passive ability. There was no real asymmetry in the original game. So just having this extra ability sounds like a lot of fun to me. Nothing else really to add on this, but I totally agree with you, Priscilla. There's so many Valeria games. This is my favorite one. I think that if you're going to play any of them, play this one. It's the best. The designer is Stan Kordonsky, so he's the guy who's made like Rurik, and he's also made Lockup, which are some amazing games. And so this is such a streamlined experience that is a lot of fun. And I think that the dice drafting is satisfying. You have the strength of the dice is tied to the action that you're taking. So if you take a strong die, you're taking a weak action. So it's got that great balance and choice, but there's like resources you can spend to mitigate that. And great question for this. My favorite is to play competitive for this one. The solo is one that I played a couple times. It just didn't return back to. I don't think the solo is anything super compelling, but the different players that if you're actually playing with people, then they're watching you constantly, and everybody sort of knows what's going on, and it's a very interactive game, which I appreciate. So there's reservation systems going on. There's the dice are getting scooped up, and it's clear to see like, oh my gosh, all these dice are good. I need to get something, and it feels so awesome when you're able to achieve victory in that competitive experience. So I recommend the competitive version for the what are these called? Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria. But good question. Good question. And that's it. Those are all the games. That's all the games that we've backed on Kickstarter for SideGame LLC. Hour and 17 minutes gone. But if you have any more questions, I'll stick around for a little bit here. I'll talk about maybe some of the future Kickstarters that we're looking at. As mentioned before, I'm not going to talk about any of the Indiegogo or Game Founder backer kit on this video. I'll probably do another video in the future where I talk about all of the other crowdfunding projects, because there's a lot of them. But those were all the outstanding ones. It actually baffled me how far back the Middara campaign was, back in July. And so the most recent one before this was Blood on the Clock Tower. So that one had just arrived back in August of this year, and had been since 2019 as well. And Frostpunk as well was one of the older ones, being available the same time as like Townsfolk Tussle. So it was almost like a year behind, which was wild. So thank you so much for being here, Mom Gamer. And thank you. Yeah, hit that rewind button. Watch it from the beginning. I think I put some good commentary maybe for everything, but it gives some idea about what's going on. For future games that we're looking to back on crowdfunding, I think that... Oh, okay. That's a good question. Running through 20 Strong really quick. Okay, yeah, we can take a look at that. That is not a bad idea. Now, that is Game Found, so I'm sort of breaking my rule, but Priscilla, you're my friend, so not a big deal. We could do this. So we'll run through 20 Strong really quick. For future things that I'm backing, though, I think that I'm trying to cut back in general on backing in general for 2023. It was a big spot in our expenditures of last year, so I think that we need to cut back on that mostly. It's not producing anything right now. And so it's sort of, it's a weird like future investment that you're not sure when it's actually going to come back on. So it's a strange thing from a business aspect to invest in kickstarting projects. You do hit that point of critical mass, which is where we are currently, where you are getting stuff in kind of constantly, but I'm not sure if that's something that's going to be good for SideGame LLC as a whole. So that's one thing that I am a little being a stickler on, is to watch our crowdfunding pace. But that being said, here's a new crowdfunding project on right now. Let's look at 20 Strong. So 20 Strong here is essentially a system for solo play. So the way it works is you have a set of 20 dice, and these dice are tied to some sort of adventure. So the game system is going to be the exact same. You're rolling dice to resolve different tests and having a story that will propel you along as well. The game time is super short, only about 40 minutes of game time, and each card is going to have some sort of challenge or test that you're using the cards for. Some of the cards are your own characters, some cards are your enemies, some cards are the events and the different scenes that you'll be interacting with. But the idea is to have a small package game of satisfying skill tests that is going to be variable. So you'll have different amounts that come out each time that you play. And so that's it that I know for like the gameplay as its own. But the IP and the theming and the fact that it is, honestly, the fact that it's a chip theory game sounds exciting to me. The idea of having this super fancy production on a small, simple solo game sounds amazing. That sounds like something I want so bad. And the fact that they're taking all of their existing IPs, they have Victorum, Too Many Bones, they have their own decks for those games in this 20 Strong system. That sounds perfect. I guess I could read really quick. Let's see if they give us a specific detail. Deck includes property. Players will select a Sentinel. Watch units. Check this out. So players will select a Sentinel, choose each round between one of three face-up opponents. So it looks like there's going to be multiple fronts that you're fighting towards, and you'll deploy different characters. So I believe it looks like there's going to be a choice between your different cards and the different enemies. So maybe you're going through, honestly, and at this point, it looks like a 3-lane combat sort of game where you'll have maybe these 3 different characters. You can sort of see it here with the 3 different types of creatures on the middle, left, and right. Interesting. Okay. That is okay. Now that we know that this is how this is going, it sounds like a system that makes sense. It sounds like it will flow well, and it sounds like you'll have a lot of decision points with where you're deploying characters and where you're sending things out. Didn't realize the dice were the system and the cards are the changing part. Yes, that's exactly what it is. And I think that's what tied it. That's the most interesting thing to me, is that if the system works, then all of the expansion packs will be sort of no-brainer purchases. Because if you like that core system, then being able to swap in new settings, new keywords, that is exciting. You have something you already enjoy, and it's so small that you can bring it wherever and have something ready to go at any time. That's awesome. Small, portable, while still being a short playtime with super fancy components. Please be good 20 strong. So good recommendation there. Priscilla will go ahead and close up for right now. So I think that's where I'm going to end this video. If you have any questions about any of the games that I talked about here, let me know down in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel already yet, please make sure that you do. It is the best way to help us grow. We're doing amazing things so far. 2022 and the end of 2022 and 2023 has been really kind to us so far. So thank you so much for all of the support. I just want to see this keep on going. Thank you so much for being here. Mom Gamer, Priscilla, thank you for chatting here on your free time. It's been excellent. All right. Have a great rest of your day. SideGame Strong.